It's time to eat.
What are you hungry for?
Sit down and get ready to consume an abundance of fantasy football knowledge from Ross Tucker and Joe Dolan.
Feed me now. I'm starving.
On the Fantasy Feast Eatin' Podcast.
Let's eat, baby. It is the Fantasy Feast Eatin' Podcast presented by DraftKings. I'm Ross Tucker, the longtime NFL offensive lineman. Now I got a bunch of podcasts. Please check me out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL or at Ross Tucker Pod. Love those of you that engage and retweet. I look at that for the Spread the Word winner on the at Ross Tucker Football Podcast. I don't know why I just said at right there. It doesn't matter. Just go with it. At any rate, this is the show that's so nice we do it twice during the season. We do the Thursday nighter and all the Sunday 1 o'clock games in episode 1. This is episode 2, the Sunday late game, Sunday nighter, Monday nighter. He is the star, Joe Dolan, at FG_Dolan. If you don't already have a subscription to fantasypoints.com and use the code 21Feast, what are we even doing? I mean, what are we even doing at this point? You need to do that because that is where they have a treasure trove of information on games like the Niners and the Seahawks. Joe, what do you got?
Well, the Seahawks are easy for me. I mean, you play Chris Carson every week. I think Russell Wilson's in play every week. DK Metcalf this week against a secondary that has had a bunch of injuries is in play this week. Tyler Lockett last week didn't have the huge game. He leaves for a little bit with a knee injury. He comes back. But Tyler Lockett's had kind of a reputation for toughing things out and playing while hurt. But when he does that, it's usually DK Metcalf time. I think you can make the argument that DK Metcalf is the number one wide receiver on the slate. It's always tough to pick either DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett for fantasy. But I think DK Metcalf, given the circumstances, Josh Norman had the nasty chest injury this week. We know about all the injuries that San Francisco's had in the secondary at the corner position. I think DK Metcalf, who had an 11-catch, 2-touchdown game against this team last year, I think DK Metcalf goes wild this week against the San Francisco 49ers. In what is, Ross, I mean, we're approaching must-win here territory for the Seahawks. Why? They have the Rams on Thursday night next week. You don't win this game, you could be staring 1-4 in the face. I think the Seahawks are coming ready to play against the San Francisco 49ers.
Wow, what do you think about the Niners?
Let's look at the backfield. I did not think Trey Sermon looked good at all. I don't know if you watched that game. I thought he looked tentative. I thought he looked limmy. I thought he looked like uncoordinated. Maybe he's just getting his feet under him. But my assumption, based on how I saw that, I think Eli Mitchell, if he's ready to play, is going to be the lead back here. And this is the indictment of Sermon. He was the only 49ers tailback to play a snap in week 3, but he played only 59% of the snaps. The 49ers essentially used Juszczyk as their lead back. He played 69% of the snaps. And by the way, does anybody love doing anything more than Al Michaels loves saying Juszczyk? He really leans into it, Ross. I mean, he cranks it up before he pulls. Juszczyk. That's what Al Michaels says on, it's a huge game for Juszczyk. Unfortunately, no Al Michaels for this one, but I would anticipate if Elijah Mitchell is ready, he's going to be the lead back for the San Francisco 49ers, just based on how I envisioned Trey Sermon's game last week. Now, Brandon Iuke, he's back amongst the realm of the living. He was behind only Deebo Samuel in snaps and routes run last week. He was above 80% of the snaps. He hadn't even touched 60% in either of the first 2 games. Brandon Iuke is back. So he is a wide receiver 3. Deebo Samuel and George Kittle, you got to play these guys.
Next game up, another NFC West battle, Cardinals and Rams.
I'm going to throw a prediction out here. I think the Rams are going to win this game by multiple scores. And that's just a gut feeling. I think the Cardinals, I feel like this Ram defense is going to take advantage of some of the Kyler Murray hero balls. And, I think you saw it last week against Jacksonville. Kyler Murray threw that. I think it was Christian Kirk, but he threw the deep post to the end zone, and he just didn't even see the safety. I mean, like, Kyler was like, there it is, go get it. And the safety was there fielding it like it was a punt. Can't do those things against the Rams. So I think Kyler Murray, I mean, he's certainly worthy of being in the MVP conversation, as is his counterpart in this game, Matthew Stafford. But I think this is going to be a tough one, a little bit tougher for Kyler Murray and the boys. DeAndre Hopkins had the rib injury, which has clearly limited him the last couple of weeks, production-wise. Jalen Ramsey has been moving all over the formation. He was a predominant slot corner the first 2 weeks of the season. Played more outside last week against Tampa Bay. They are playing a lot of zone, so it's not going to be a shadow situation. But I think this is a tough matchup for Kyler Murray in this offense. I'm not telling you to bench him. I'm not saying that, you got to – no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it is a tougher matchup. In my opinion, I think they might have a little bit more problems moving the football in this game. This receiving core is tough for me. A.J. Green has a 100-yard game. Christian Kirk has a 100-yard game. Rondale Moore has like 1 yard receiving after having massive games in the first couple weeks of the season. His route rate is down. He's 4th on this depth chart. Rondale Moore is going to have to earn more snaps going forward. And with the way Kirk and A.J. Green are looking right now, there's no reason for the Cardinals to force it with him. So I know he was a popular waiver pickup, but unfortunately, his usage is down. One more note on the Cardinals. Chase Edmonds is currently the highest scoring running back for fantasy who does not have a touchdown. I don't think I anticipate a lot of touchdowns for him, but it just goes to show you that you can get production out of Chase Edmonds, especially if the Cardinals are going to be playing from behind in this game against the LA Rams. I would think Chase Edmonds has an opportunity to catch 4 or 5 passes in this game.
On the other side for the Rams, Joe?
I know there's people who have Robert Woods who are extremely disappointed right now. Count me among them. I was drafting Robert Woods everywhere I could. And really, frankly, the analysis should have been wherever I was drafting Robert Woods, I should have been drafting Cooper Kupp. And that was just something that, we're going to have to live with. Robert Woods' target rate is still above 20%. The problem is for fantasy, why would Matthew Stafford throw to Robert Woods when Cooper Kupp is wide ass open on every single play? I mean, every single time I looked up at that game last week against Tampa Bay, I'm seeing Stafford drop back, and he's throwing the ball 15 yards down the field, and there's a 10-yard halo of nothingness around Cooper Kupp. He's just wide-ass open. That's going to continue. I mean, Cooper Kupp's the number 1 receiver in fantasy right now. I don't see why that wouldn't continue against a team that is still very thin at corner. I know they've played some teams that haven't taken advantage of it, but this is a team thin at corner. I think Matthew Stafford throws for 350 and 3 touchdowns in this game. And maybe Robert Woods gets in the box. Maybe he does. But I think this is a game for Stafford to throw the ball all over the yard. Just a note, Tyler Higbee got in the end zone. His usage was a little bit down. He played every snap in the first 2 games of the season. He was at 75% in week 3. I think it was just a matchup thing. They used Munt. They brought in Munt to block a little bit more. I don't know if that's going to be the case against the Cardinals. Maybe they want to counteract Chandler Jones a little bit. But maybe Munt plays a little bit. But Tyler Higbee is a start-worthy tight end. And I actually thought Sony Michel looked pretty good. He had 20 carries for 67 yards, but it was against the best run defense in football. I thought he looked overall okay. We'll have to see what the situation is there with Darrell Henderson in that backfield. But now I think once Henderson's back, Michel's probably made this a rotation.
What about, Joe? Let's dive into the Steelers and the Packers. 2 teams seemingly going in opposite directions.
Yeah, first with the Packers, Davante Adams could get 20 targets in this game because Marquez Valdez-Scantling's dealing with a hamstring injury. Robert Tunyan, he had 1 catch last week. He was in to block significant amount, not like drop back pass pro block, but chip blocking. I think you saw him, Ross, level Nick Bosa on one of those chip blocks. I wonder if he's going to be doing the same thing against TJ Watt this week if Watt plays, because the Packers are down to their 3rd string left tackle. So unfortunately, I don't think it's a great week to use Robert Tunyan. So I think Davante Adams could get 20 targets. Aaron Jones is far and away the lead back here. A.J. Dillon hasn't had 20 yards rushing in a game yet. And then you're playing Aaron Rodgers. So I think it's pretty easy with Green Bay right now. If you are looking for a DFS option at receiver, Alan Lazard was the guy who got the majority of the snaps beyond Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So that's something to consider if Valdez-Scantling can't play for Green Bay. for Pittsburgh, I mean, Ben looks toast. I mean, he looks toast. And Najee Harris is going to be the recipient of checkdowns. Juju's dealing with a rib injury. I don't know if he's going to play. We'll see about Deontay Johnson with his knee injury that cost him last week. Chase Claypool, thank the Lord he got 15 targets because Ben's missing him on throws when Claypool's open down the field. It's a nightmare right now for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The guy I'm most confident in is obviously Najee Harris because he's Ben's checkdown guy. But, I mean, I thought it was just completely emblematic of what this Steeler offense is right now. 4th and 10, 2-score game. You're in the red zone. Ben Roethlisberger throws a swing pass to Najee Harris. Tells you where his confidence in his arm is right now.
It's a good point. Packers, always a pretty narrow fantasy team, Joe.
Yeah, it's right now. I mean, unless you're playing like DFS, deep option, and you want to use Alan Lazard, given the usage for Robert Tunyan as a chip blocker, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, lock and load.
The Ravens take on the Broncos, Joe.
Hollywood Brown owes me part of his paycheck from last week, by the way, because he cost me in DFS with 3 of the worst drops you will see. You know, people get on Lamar Jackson about his passing, and you know, some of it's justified. But then you feel bad for the guy when he drops 3 perfect balls to Marquise Brown, all 3 of which could have been touchdowns, and they go through his hands. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. Rashad Bateman's returning to practice this week. I doubt he's going to play, but given Hollywood Brown's drop issues pop back up, I would be considering picking Rashad Bateman up off the waiver wire. I think they're going to use him. Mark Andrews is going to be the number 1 receiver for Baltimore moving forward. I hope you bought low on him. He had 100 yards last week against Detroit. I would anticipate that he is a go-to guy for Lamar Jackson this week. And unfortunately, I don't know what the hell to do in this backfield because last week, Baltimore, which has been the run-heaviest team in the NFL since Lamar Jackson took over, 7 carries for Latavius Murray, 5 for Tyson Williams, 3 for Devontae Freeman. The only target out of the backfield goes to Tyson Williams. He doesn't catch it. Not confident playing in any of these guys right now. I still have to stick with Hollywood Brown for now. See if they'll go out and give him an opportunity, but this is a tougher matchup against Denver. So Lamar Jackson as a QB1, Mark Andrews as a tight end 1. Hollywood Brown's a very, very volatile wide receiver 2 right now. Pick up Rashad Bateman on your waiver wire. But right now, that backfield is not usable right now in all but the deepest of leagues.
What about the Broncos backfield?
So, Javonte Williams fumbled at the end of the game going in for a touchdown last week. And I don't know how Vic Fangio is going to handle this because he might be one of those hard-nosed defensive coaches who is like, brr, brr, brr. If you fumbled, brr, you're not going to play. And so right now I have to consider Melvin Gordon is probably the lead back in a committee. I would hope Vic Fangio does not bench Javonte Williams in week 4 for essentially what amounted to a meaningless fumble in week 3. It was a 26-0 game. There was no way the Jets were going to come back. The Jets didn't score after it, but we'll have to see how that is handled. If you're playing this backfield, I'd consider Melvin Gordon a RB2 this week. Javonte Williams, a very volatile flex until I see how they handle that. KJ Hamler's out for the season, the wide receiver, the slot receiver with an ACL tear. More targets are coming to the way of Tim Patrick. Nobody wants to play him. All he does is produce every week. He's a wide receiver 3. Cortland Sutton is a wide receiver 2. I think he'll get more targets this week. If you're looking for a guy maybe to make a big play for DFS, the guy who's going to stand in for KJ Hamler is Deontay Spencer. He's just a lesser version of KJ Hamler, but somebody who's going to be minimum priced and might have an opportunity to make a play down the field for you. Not the greatest of weeks to use Teddy Bridgewater, though, against this Raven defense, even though he is playing out of his mind, the best I've ever seen him play.
Before we get to Sunday night and the game that everybody's talking about, I want to pump the brakes a little bit and make sure everyone knows that if you're looking for more stopping power from your brakes, go with Duralast Elite brake pads, available exclusively at AutoZone. We all already know Duralast parts are proven tough. Duralast Elite is like Joe Dolan and the knowledge you get from fantasy points. It's next level. 3 times longer than a typical Duralast pad. That is good news, especially if you find yourself in a car with a lot of stop and go traffic or you got heavier loads. Not good. You need good brake pads with a protective hex pattern. Joe, you know what a hex pattern is?
No.
Neither do I. I keep asking all my guests. Nobody knows what a hex pattern is, but it's clearly good. Listen, if it's so fancy and complicated that Joe and I don't know what it is, no wonder it's the best.
It's like a hexagon, like a six-sided.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking. Anyway.
Oh, man, I can't imagine how good that is for your brakes, though. Oh, man.
It's really good. The future of stopping starts with Duralast Elite brake pads only at AutoZone. Bucks, Patriots. Talk to me, Joe.
Well, Tom Brady's going nuts in this game. I think we know that. I mean, he's going to break the record. By the way, my mom's calling up. She's complaining to me because she has YouTube TV and she calls it Yoo-Hoo TV. But she's complaining to me because YouTube TV and NBC are in a pissing match right now because NBC wants YouTube TV to pay more money to carry their networks. And NBC's got all the leverage because SNL's coming back this week and you got Tom Brady going in Sunday night to break the all-time passing record in New England. I mean, could the timing be any better for these guys to get even richer? Comcast here, come on. But Tom Brady's going to go nuts in this game. Evans, Godwin, and Antonio Brown. It's an Antonio Brown and Tom Brady revenge game. If Antonio Brown passes the COVID protocols, I'm starting all these guys. It's a Gronk revenge game. I'm starting Gronk. Tom Brady might throw 5 touchdown passes in this game. The backfield is useless right now with the exception of Gio Bernard. They don't run the ball. My stat last week.
Gio Bernard's a little banged up, by the way.
He does have a knee injury.
Just went on IR.
Yeah, so he does have a knee injury. If he doesn't go, then I'm not. I mean, it's Fournette or bust for me. But here's the situation here with the Buccaneers. I mean, they're going to throw the ball everywhere. I said on last week's program, Tom Brady was their goal line back. They had run 5 plays inside the 5-yard line. All 5 were passes. All 5 were touchdowns. What did they do this week? They get down to the 1-yard line. Tom Brady sneaks it in. So Tom Brady is a touchdown machine right now. He is going nuts in this game. I know that's narrative street, but you can't deny it that he's going nuts in this game.
No, he is. What about for the Patriots? Anybody? James White's out.
James White's out. Nasty hip injury. Here's the problem. They don't trust any of their backs in pass protection with the exception of Brandon Bolden. We don't want that. We don't want that for fantasy. We'll see if they give Ramondre Stevenson a little bit of help here. One thing that I'm looking to see if Belichick might do, Belichick and Josh McDaniels, and this is a complete, Ross, maybe I'm going to look like an idiot on Sunday night. I wonder if they use Jonnu Smith as a running back on passing downs. And as somebody who they're going to trust him to protect, they're going to release him into the flat. I mean, he was awful last week. He had multiple drops, including one that resulted in a pick 6. But I just wonder if with James White out there, not out there, if to get somebody in the backfield who actually provides you offensive upside in the way that Brandon Bolden doesn't, on passing downs, do they use Jonnu Smith in the backfield? I'm just a little bit interested in that. Hunter Henry, though, has lapped Jonnu Smith. He's earned more trust because he's not dropping passes every time he gets thrown the ball. So just something to watch there. Jacoby Myers, Damian Harris are really the only Patriots I'm interested in playing, though, for fantasy.
Last but certainly not least, the Vegas Raiders against the Chargers. You know, I know you hate him, but Peyton Barber looked pretty good, Joe. You hate him, and he looked pretty good.
Well, I need to stop tweeting during games. Peyton Barber's got a picture of me on his locker, and he throws darts at it. No, he looked great. The Pro Football Focus came out with the stat that the Raiders running backs have negative rushing yards before contact this year. Like, they're just not getting blocking at all. Remember, both of their guards are out. Richie Incognito's on IR. Denzel Good's out for the season. So the run blocking hasn't been good. And if you're looking at, Peyton Barber, the way he ran, John Gruden's going to trust him right now. 3-0 team. I don't know what the situation is with Josh Jacobs. I don't know. We're going to have to know beforehand what his status is before I have any interest in playing him on Monday night. And I'm probably just sitting him because if you don't have a backup option. And Peyton Barber might have worked his way into a 3-man rotation here, which is ugly because they can't run block. Kenyon Drake is tied for 3rd among running backs in targets, but he's awful as a runner. He has 21 carries for 44 yards, which is miserable. But he catches passes. Hunter Renfrow, wide receiver 3 option. He's making plays. And I will tell you one thing about the Raiders, and this is one of the reasons Darren Waller's usage hasn't been as high the last 2 weeks. I got to be honest. I think Henry Ruggs looks pretty good. He's making contested catches. Henry Ruggs, we know what his speed is, but he's earned more looks from Derek Carr, who is the NFL's leading passer by a mile. So Henry Ruggs is out there making plays. I think all of these Raider receivers are like wide receiver 3s, and you just hope that's the week that they get the attention from Derek Carr. You have to play Darren Waller, obviously. He's still an air yards king. He's just not getting as many looks as he got in week 1 because Derek Carr is starting to trust some of these wide receivers a little bit more.
Go, Chargers, go. What do you got, Joe?
Mike Williams is the story for the Chargers. On 9 targets last week against the Chiefs, Williams posted 7 for 122 receiving. It was his 2nd best fantasy game of his career. But it's now the consistency that's defining Williams. Joe Lombardi this offseason basically said he envisions Williams as a Michael Thomas-like player, and he's being used like Michael Thomas. The 9 targets he saw last week against the Chiefs were actually his fewest of the season. And through 3 games, only Cooper Kupp has scored more fantasy points than Mike Williams. And the funny part is Mike Williams isn't even tops on his own team in targets. That's Keenan Allen. This is a great fantasy team right now because Justin Herbert's dealing. He's throwing the ball essentially to 2 guys, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, and you're obviously using Austin Eckler out of the backfield. This looks like almost like a mini version of the Vikings. Actually, maybe more of a supercharged version of the Vikings because Justin Herbert is stupid talented. Jared Cook's still the tight end to use here, but the Chargers are easy for me. You play Keenan Allen and Mike Williams every single week. You play Austin Eckler every single week, and you play Justin Herbert every single week. This is a high projected game, high projected total. The Chargers are a narrow fantasy team, and they're explosive. There is nothing prettier than that for fantasy football.
You know what else you do? You go to fantasypoints.com, and you subscribe, and you put in the code 21Feast for the discount, and then you have more fantasy knowledge than you know what to do with, more fantasy information at your fingertips. You also go to keeps.com, use the code FEAST, and go ahead and get the free Madden this week. Other than that, I'm stuffed. We're done.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Feast podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, Business of Sports, and the College Draft. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.
A lot of times on the show, I mentioned DraftKings. Here's what you need to know. You got to be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. By the way, if what I was talking about included a deposit bonus, doesn't always, sometimes it does. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough, and deposit bonuses are paid out in site credit.